All right, with the Celtics riding off in the sunset after their 18th NBA championship, we get Dan Roach back here for some Sox talk. And Dan, you come back into the baseball fold at the perfect time because the Red Sox are playing their best baseball this season. They haven't lost a series in the month of June, and they now hold one of the AL wildcard spots.
Yeah, it's certainly been a pleasure following them from afar. And I will freely admit that, Joe, that I've been following them from afar, catching innings, catching them on my iPad, catching them whenever I can around the Celtics. And I think maybe the good thing is if you want to use that team to as an example to the Red Sox as we start, two things. They're going to see, and they're going to see when the Celtics come to Fenway, that they're going to kind of see what it's like to win a championship, right? And everything that comes with it, all the joy, all the fun. And one of the things that I think we all like about this Red Sox team is that they seem to be having more and more fun on a daily basis. Now that granted that comes with winning, but just to have the joy and the love of the game, I feel like this city has had so much negativity around these players and what have you, that I just think it's nice for them to see another pro team win a championship and the joy that it brings so many people. So keep your heads down, keep doing what you're doing, and ignore everyone who says you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think maybe that's a good lesson for this Red Sox team as they move forward.
Yeah, and it will be a celebration at Fenway tonight with the Blue Jays in town, but of course the Celtics being honored at Fenway Park. But they're 7-1 over their last 8 games. And Dan, with the Celtics and their playoff run in the NBA Finals, it's interesting. The Red Sox found themselves in a spot where they were hovering around 500. They had these really tough series at home in the Phillies and Yankees, and they took care of business against both those teams, taking 2 out of 3. And then on this road trip against the Blue Jays and Reds, they go 5-1. And all of a sudden, not only is this team now 6 games above 500, but there are true stars on this team. And Jaren Duran, he's really turned into one of them.
Yeah, and it's certainly a great story from the sense of he's kind of been the full gambit of what it's like to be a Major League Baseball player, right? You know, he had the coming up and the speed and everything that was so good about him, and then we all remember him flailing his arms in the outfield and not being able to catch the ball and going back down to AAA, and then the confidence level and the issues that he's had dealing with all that. Then the injury, dealing with that. So he's kind of been through everything. And now he's playing with this, stronger body, a mature body, and a mind that's ready to be a big leaguer, right? And we're watching him, become a star in front of our eyes. And the fact that Alex Cora said, I look at Rafi Devers, I look at all the, some of the Wilyer Abreu, I look at Duran, and I want him maybe to be our leader. That says a lot for Alex Cora, who's been in the game forever, to kind of designate him. Now maybe some of any self-doubt that Duran has had now becomes, I've got to become a leader on the big league level. So his confidence grows, leadership grows, and it's kind of cool to watch it all unfold in front of our eyes. So yeah, so far so good, especially this year. And knock on wood, I'd use your head if you were here, but knock on wood, no injuries for a guy like that.
Yeah, and what's been amazing, Dan, is he's also played every single game. You just don't really see that across all sports, to be quite honest. And yet he's a guy that wants to be out there day in, day out. Alex Cora even jokingly said, hey, we're going to give you the day off. And he was like, no, that's not happening. And it was just a joke anyway. But, to his credit, he has earned the trust of Alex Cora. And that quote that you just brought up, I think, is a true telling of how much Alex Cora trusts this guy. And then the production, it's not even all-star level. I'd say it's almost MVP type stuff from Jaren Duran, because he's 4th in the sport now and wins above replacement, but he can beat you so many different ways. It's the bat, a 13-game hitting streak. It's the speed. He steals a ton of bases, and he scored the game-winning run in Saturday's game against the Reds. And then on top of that, the glove as well, where he makes a game-saving catch in the 8th inning, or in the 9th inning on Saturday.
Joe, you're Mr. Research, Mr. Stats, or whatever. So I give you the props. You tell me who he's in the top 5 with in the game, top 5 or 6 as far as wins above replacement goes, and that kind of tells you where he is right now as far as his playing level. So go ahead, tell our audience those players.
So this is according to Baseball Reference. Gunnar Henderson is 1, Aaron Judge is 2, Shohei Ohtani is 3. You may have heard of all 3 of those guys. And then it's Jaren Duran. He's in elite company right now.
Right. And that says a lot for him and where his level of play is right now. Now, granted, to sustain that over 162 games isn't easy, but just to see that talent and to be at that level, with the Red Sox, playing the game differently than everybody else, just hitting the ball and running, he's leading the way, and that's very cool to watch. I mean, a guy like Rafael Devers has to be like, wow, this is good. I can get in line with this because there's guys up ahead of me that are running, stealing bases, getting in scoring position, which means what? RBIs, which means recognition, which means all-stars, which means things like that, and winning. And that's bottom line. You've put that together. So, yeah, to watch these guys unfold the way they have, especially Duran leading the way, very cool story.
Yeah, and again, hopefully he's going to be in the All-Star game. In terms of fan voting, which does end on Thursday at noon, doesn't look like he's going to get there, but he's so deserving. And what's fun about this Red Sox roster, Dan, is I think there are a couple guys that do really deserve to be there. Last year, it was just Kenley Jansen, and there were a couple of guys that were maybe on the fence that you thought you could make an argument for, but Jaren Duran, he's surefire at this moment. But he's also not the only guy on this team with a 13-game hitting streak. Connor Wong also has one. I think he deserves consideration. Tanner Houck should definitely be in the game and actually maybe should start the game. And then there are a couple other guys that you could put into consideration for it too.
Well, the question is, I kind of go old school baseball, right? The stars. So a lot of those guys you mentioned, Kenley Jansen, yes. But did you mention, Devers, they see him and It's like, okay, I don't know. So you may get, let's put it this way. Let's rephrase it. If you could get one of three or two of three Red Sox players on the All-Star game today, who would be your choices? And it doesn't matter the name, doesn't matter anything else. Who would be your choices?
I think you'd go Duran, obviously. I think you have to put Tanner Houck there too. Just he's been so good. And I think there's an actual argument that he's the best starting pitcher in Major League Baseball this year. And then on top of that, if I had to pick a third,
I gave you two.
You only gave me two. All right.
You always ruined it. You know what I mean? So, but I think
I'm out of practice here, Dan. It's been a bit.
Right. Well, I think if you ask the average fan in baseball, okay, who should be in the All-Star game for the Red Sox? They'd quickly look and say, well, Devers and Jansen, right? Because that's how they're the name guys. But then the clear one is Duran. You could say, okay, now it's a matter of, besides the fan voting, how many guys are they able to get in? So realistically, one, maybe two, just the way it is. And a lot of it is positional players who lines up with what team, who's performing well at a certain position. So Connor Wong could go ahead of Tanner Houck, even though as great as Houck has been and should be starting, you can find pitchers on an all-star team. You know what I mean? It's pretty easy to do. So I don't know, but I think clearly we see Duran as one, and then you can go maybe different ways after that. But that again is a testament to the way this team plays. And again, Joe, I will stop you right here. We'll talk about it 1,000 times this year because I feel like he's going to walk away when the season is done. If you're John Henry, Tom Werner, Larry Lucchino, and Craig Breslow, you look at the situation right now, and who else do you want in that dugout leading your baseball team? Who else around baseball? You have an argument to make him the highest paid manager in the game, secure him for 5 years, and just go from there, right? Because he's answered every question. He's done everything you want. He didn't get the players that he wanted on the big league level, and he's still winning, still making this team, and still developing players on the major league level. Again, please, John Henry, you can cut payroll. You can do what you want. You can charge your highest ticket prices. And again, I know John and Tom have done a really good job with this franchise over the years. If you do all that, just do one thing. Sign Alex Cora to a long-term deal. Please, just get it done and move on. And if he says no, he says no. But offer him a 5-year deal as being the highest or one of the highest paid managers in the game.
Dan, Alex Cora has won a World Series, and there's an argument to be made that this year is his best managerial effort with all the injuries, the lack of expectations, and all the young talent. And it's a testament to this coaching staff that they have been able to get a lot out of this group and get them to where they are. Do you think that this coaching staff is the best in baseball? Because I actually do think there's an argument to be made based off this year and what they've already accomplished. And we'll see where the season goes. But the fact that they're in this spot with all the injuries and that they've been able to get to this point and that they're pitching-wise one of the best teams in the sport, ERA, home runs per 9, strikeouts, walks, and then on top of that, offensively, top 10 in average on base and slugging. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is. And again, what's really cool, Joe, about the game is you can take a coach, and all these coaches who are on the major league level, in my mind, are really good coaches, right? And what makes the great ones is having the ability, and also part of timing, which players match up with you when you can be your most effective. You know what I mean? So Andrew Bailey took this group of young players with not much experience, and for the most part has taken each one and made them better individually, and collectively they've done it as a team. So Andrew Bailey has had a great reputation already coming in as a good pitching coach, a very good pitching coach. But now he takes it a step further because of what he's been able to do and mold and shape the personnel that's here. And Fetsi is the same thing with him and what he's been able to do with this group, and preaching over and over again and changing their philosophy into a hit and run type of baseball team.
Yeah, the speed has been a game changer with this group. And we deserve to give a shout out to David Hamilton, the jumps he's made this year, the speed element, and then Rob Refsnyder as well. What a huge contributor he's been to this group. And as the elder statesman has just been huge from a leadership standpoint as well. I did want to end on this, Dan, because as much optimism as I think everybody feels right now, I thought Red Sox payroll, the X account, putting this out puts it into a little bit of context in terms of how the seasons have gone recently, because last year on the day yesterday, so June 23rd, the Sox were 40-37, a half game out of the third wild card spot. We know how that season ended. They were playing pretty well coming into the trade deadline, and then they didn't add. They finished in last place in the American League East. 2022, 39-31 through their first 70 games on June 23rd, and they had the second wild card spot. Same deal, where they end in last place in the American League East. So what do you think needs to happen so that history doesn't repeat itself here for a third straight year, where the Sox are playing well at this current juncture and don't finish in the cellar of the division?
Well, I think three things, right? They can't have a major injury. That's number one. Any of these key guys that we've already been talking about, you can't have them going down for long periods of time. And maybe Duran is that one guy, right? That you look at this roster now, you can't have him go down for a long time because of what his ability to do and change the game at the top of the order all the way down. You also got to have the sustained performances. You can't have any more of the, Duran is great for the month of June, and then in July he hits 091. You know what I mean? It's just not getting on base and what have you. So you need consistency in the performances. You need health. And then as you approach August, if this team continues to do what they do, and has a good 6 weeks coming up here, that they add to that team, that they go out and they say, yes, we appreciate what you've done. Let's go out and get 1-2 relievers, a starter, some bench players and what have you to build around this team, give them that vote of confidence, which they haven't had the last 2 years, right? Come trade deadline time, it's been, nope, sorry, we're not going to do it. And that gets a team down, and they go down the slippery slope and into last place partly because of that too. So all those things, and then if they got Cora signed to a long-term extension, I think this is a possibility this team could make some noise. So I think those, in my opinion, those are some of the keys that we look at. What do you look at as far as what this team needs to do in order to sustain?
Well, if they continue to play well, they're going to need to add at the trade deadline, because I think, to your point, where the way these last couple seasons have gone, I think 2022, Dan, made sense, right? You look at what they got back at the trade deadline, and they trade away Christian Vasquez. They get some really notable pieces back in Valdez, and more importantly, at this point, Abreu. So that's worked out for them. I think last year you really let the team down by not adding, because of the way that Alex Cora and some of the the older guys in the team were keeping it together. And the asking for adding and that to not come really, I think took the air out of the balloon for that team last year. I think if they continue to play this well, there needs to be an addition of some, type of, just some type of piece that is going to solidify it a little bit more, because you can't just say the coaching staff, okay, you have to figure out a way to get this group there, even though the talent doesn't necessarily say it. Although it is starting to say it, because guys are taking steps forward. But health is key. Starting pitching is key. And I think that's where they may need to add, Dan, because they just did a bullpen game on Sunday, and they didn't feel comfortable having Cooper Criswell be up here. They did it partly because of roster construction, but I do think if they felt like he was a surefire piece moving forward here, that wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have done that and then went with a bullpen game. So I think starting wise, that's the key. And they don't have a lot of internal options to fulfill a spot that would be one for a surefire playoff contender.
And let me just footnote that by saying what you said about, in 22 and the moves that they made in Vasquez, what have you, that remember, the one thing I think Chaim Bloom we've seen is develop talent, right? He's done a really good job with identifying and developing talent in the system and getting it better and what have you. I think the one failure that he might have had, and maybe failure is too big of a word, but I thought, if you're Craig Breslow, you got to communicate with Cora, you got to communicate with the coaching staff, and you got to communicate with the players, and maybe be on the road during the 2 weeks leading up to the trade deadline, so that if you make a trade that you think is going to make you better in the future, but maybe can get you a little bit better now, you've got to express each and every player as to why you're doing it, because they kind of ripped the heart all of a sudden out of the 22 team, even though we look now and the Vasquez move wasn't a bad move, because we've seen, what they've done, but you can't do that to a team that's been together since February 1st, fighting, clawing, scratching, doing everything you're asking them to do, and then rip a leader out. You know what I mean? You just can't do that to the team unless you have a good reason and unless you're explaining to them exactly what you're doing. And I'm on board, guys, and we're going to win. Let's go. That I think maybe Breslow needs to do a better job of that than maybe we saw with Chaim Bloom when he was here.
And I think the key difference is something, Dan, that you keep hitting on, is that Alex Cora is in the final year of his contract. And if you really do want to try to convince him to come back, you want to show that this team is willing to compete when the time comes. And I think, as you've mentioned, the last couple of years when that time has possibly come and they didn't add, it's sort of been a letdown to the team.
And that might be a good message to the team, right? Not only the trade moves that you're looking for and everything is, but just to say to the team from ownership all the way down, Alex Cora is your guy. He's our guy. He's not going anywhere. So let's win. Let's go. Let's do this together, as opposed to, hey, we're playing our butts off. We're doing everything right here, and we're getting some pieces of the puzzle. But wait, Alex, who's our leader, isn't getting any rewards or benefits of what's going on here. If they do that, maybe that's an extra step mentally for this team too.
Yeah. And in the meantime, hopefully they can continue to keep up what they've done as of late, because it's not only winning baseball, it's an exciting brand of baseball with speed and power and pitching as well. And hopefully they can keep it up. They got the Blue Jays and Padres coming up here at home. Some off days mixed in. They have 3 coming up before the off day on Thursday, but chance to rest a little bit with some spurts in there. And hopefully they can keep it up and really continue to bolster that case to add at the trade deadline. But in the meantime, Dan, we're glad to have you back here on the baseball front. We missed you.
Well, we're bringing joy. That's all we're doing, right? Salty's Karma, joy, and lots more joy when it comes to the games, when it comes to what we do, how we, you're getting married down the road.
Yeah.
Everything's good. My son got married. My daughter's getting married next year. All joy. Everything's joy these days when it comes to our life in Boston sports.
And as long as the weather keeps holding up the way it has with sunlight. Yesterday we got some rain, but we'd like a little bit more nice weather too.
Okay.
All right. Bye, Dad.